Hello, everyone. Welcome to School After Hours podcast, where staff, administrators, and families keep their finger on the pulse of the wonderful world of OST programming, aka out of school time programming. I am your host, Jay Lee, and on today's show, we have Mr. Curtis Hall with us today. He is the founder of New Collar Solutions LLC. We'll be discussing the importance of mentorship for young men, the 8 pillars of power and how it's used in the youth coaching program New Collar Solutions, and the significance of teaching emotional intelligence skills to our young men today. Well, before we get into this interview with Mr. Curtis, let's jump into our Community Corner. Community Corner is a segment of the show that allows guests or myself to share tips, advice, or information on a specific topic with youth, families, and community members. For this episode's Community Corner, I asked Curtis what are some resources available to our young men in the community if they are interested in getting a mentor but are not in a youth development program. Here was his response.
Hello, thank you for having me today with you. Okay, so I'm going to tackle this question in 2 parts here briefly. Being as though we're here in Central Virginia, I'm going to outline or identify some resources that are available. We have a wonderful program called Launch for Life here in Richmond. It can be reached at launchforlife.com. And it's a free mentoring program for communities of color. And you get a whole year free. And you do one-on-one as well as group sessions. We also have Inspire RVA, who the founder is Ms. Chelsea Young, is an awesome resource, who has an awesome mentoring program for both young men and young women. And I'll be helping out on March 2nd with the Youth Night for that program, one of her programs. We have Boys Bound for Success, which I'm a co-lead for in the St. Paul's Baptist Church, focusing on serving middle school and high school young men. And then also we have a local clinician, Dr. James Harris, who offers help to young men as well as young adult men in terms of mental wellness and health and therapy. So those are some resources right here locally in Central Virginia that anybody has access to that's a young man of color or young men of color that they want to seek life coaching for or mentorship or therapy for. In terms of becoming a mentor or a mentee, getting connected, it's important that you realize why you're doing it and be authentic in terms of how you're going to connect, and make sure that you're being cognizant of truly getting to know the individuals that you'll be serving. That's very important because young people want 3 key things: to be seen, acknowledged, and heard. So that's what you got to take as you go to start a mentoring program or become a mentor. Those things are critical.
Thank you, Curtis, for sharing that wonderful information. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this interview. All right, we're going to roll into these questions, Mr. Curtis. So the first one that I have for you is tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in youth development.
So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the youngest of 4 kids. I have older sisters, but I was baby boy. So long story short, as a young man in middle school, I started playing football. And one summer I went home and was taken in by a gentleman named Carlos Bradley, who became my first mentor. I was working out, wanting to get better, make the state team. But that was the seed that was planted in terms of a man, because my father wasn't present, that truly volitionally invested time in me. And he didn't want anything. He just saw me working. He saw me dedicated, but he knew how I could be improve on my process. And of course it evolved to beyond the football field into manhood. So that was the seed to answer your question in terms of what got me started. So as I began to go, my trajectory took me into church organizations once I got saved. And then even once I became a United States Army officer, hats off to fellow veterans who may hear this, thank you for your service. I began to work with young junior officers, but also wherever I was stationed at, I would work with youth groups. So it evolved. And I said, you know what? When my wife were talking, we said, well, it's the thing that we would love to do if somebody woke us up in the middle of the night for we wouldn't have any gripes about. And it's about serving young people. So with that said, New Collar Solutions came along in 2018. So, and it initially started on a project management side, but then, morphed into youth because that's where we want to have our focus.
Awesome. And being a man that has mentored and has been a mentee, how important is it for a young man, especially a young man that is African-American, Hispanic? How important is it to have that role model in your life if you are a young man trying to survive and make it in the world?
So it's very critical. And I mean, I can't even really put words to it, but having an image of someone that resonates with you in terms of who you are and how you define yourself is very paramount to being an inspiration for you to say, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I can go. And to be honest, you can have all the resources in the world, but without a connection, it's moot. So that's how we connect. That's why it's so important to have those pictures of yourself as a young man. If you're Hispanic, African, African American, Caribbean, there's people out here that look like you and are awesome. Because I want to be inclusive of all communities of color, so because we're such a wide range.
I know that's right. Yes,
so,
yes.
So
Get these West Indians out here.
So it's a beautiful thing.
So, Mr. Curtis, why did you want to create a mentoring program for young men, and how does your 8 pillars of power influence the structure of your program? So I want you to break down or tell us about these 8 pillars of power, because they're the truth. And I want everybody.
Okay. And
everybody to hear them.
I appreciate the love. So giving birth to New College, it was born out of me feeling like and knowing I need to pay it forward in terms of my life calling and sharing my gift with young men, and at least at the minimum being a connector to someone else or organization they may need, because it was done for me and still is being done for me. Even in my 40s here now, I have mentors and they're who's farther along than me and are still doing it. So that's what we got to do, because we truly are a village. And so these 8 pillars of power, I appreciate the love. They really shape the amalgamation of my experience, the feedback I get from the young men I work with, and they're very paramount, and it allows my engagement model, because that's how I refer to my curriculum, as an engagement model, because it's not cookie cutter. It's tailored towards each individual I deal with, because everybody has their own idiosyncratic needs. Even in a workshop, you got to be cognizant of that. So it's adaptive enough to where it speaks to everybody. So the first one is accountability. We all need to take responsibility for our flaws, our challenge areas, as well as our strength, because that's our truth. When you accept accountability, you accept your truth. That's the first part. And what's coupled to that is self-love as well. So that's why it's so critical. Then that goes into the next one, irrational belief in self. You got to be persistent. Don't let nobody, not even yourself, talk you out of your passion, because sometimes we can be in our own heads too much. And this is something I'm still working with, because you can have feelings of imposterism. I'm not smart enough. They may not be receptive, a myriad of excuses, but why not? Why not me? Why not Curtis? And I'll be honest, it took that irrational belief in self for me to start this, because I was like, who's going to want to listen to me? But then God was like, you're the person they need to listen to. One of the people, at least. So you got to be persistent, determined, and have your determination be relentless in that. Emotional intelligence, and this is something specifically for men, is big, because we know the old stereotype of being stoic, indifferent, but it's all right to give ourselves permission to feel a certain way, whether it's upset, happy, disappointed. And I'll give an example. I have 2 awesome daughters, 11 and 12. And my wife would tell you, me and our oldest, we have like a dynamic, because even though they're 19 months apart, it seemed like Journey and I were together for so long. But we've been in, heated fellowships to where I had to apologize to her and realize, hey, you made Daddy feel a certain way, and vice versa. But it's allowed us to continue to build our connection, So I can't speak enough on emotional intelligence, and we need to be doing that with men, because one thing I did find and continue to find, we are not trusting as men of each other. And I first saw this really amplified in the Bible study group I was with, and that was like the theme, like, why don't we do more men stuff? Because we don't trust each other, because it's always it's always performance and competition. So, but if we can develop trust and realize we need to support each other, I'm not in competition for your woman. I'm not in competition for a job, not in competition for your position, but I'm just a brother who want to share with you, and likewise, and we add value to each other. So that's big. That's big. Space safeguarding, this couples that we got to be extremely selective who we allow around us with their energy. And Lord knows it's hard, especially to let people go when you have such a rooted shared history, whether it's a childhood friend, somebody in a fraternity, a best friend, a coworker who has been your ace, but you got to have folks that evolve with you and then realize when the season is done. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, because Curtis was different in 1985, 95, 2005, 2015, and will be in 2025. So I got to be cognizant to surround myself with people who can feed me as well as I can contribute to, because it needs to be reciprocity there. And one indicator that I've learned is people that come to give, those are the people you want around. When they're truly unconditional, positive regard, those are the people you want around. And I'll use my marriage as an example, not because we're the best couple, because Lord knows we're working, but one thing we do know, we came to add value to each other. We didn't want to take from each other. We want to come and add value. So it's about that balance. And I'm pretty sure you and awesome brother Chris do that too. So yeah. So mindfulness, I know my wife hit on this, but she actually schooled me to this a little bit more in depth beyond just the superficiality of it. So yes, just being cognizant, realizing you're in the moment, and it helps to kind of relieve anxiety as well. You know, when you're feeling anxious or something got you on edge, take a minute to distract yourself with something positive. Sometimes it's a picture for me. Sometimes it's a song. You know, sometimes some people exercise, whatever it is, to help you recenter and refocus yourself. Intentional creativity, don't doubt how creative you can be. Don't disqualify what you bring to the table just because somebody sat down before you. So with that said, use your creativity, use your moxie or your courage. Be resilient and resourceful. Know how to be content with all things and content with nothing. You know, I know that's a biblical principle, but it's true in life. We got to learn how to be adaptive, because every situation, a lot of situations are not going to be ideal. So we got to be intentional, be resilient, resourceful, how we make the best of it. And then we build from there. And cultural competency, this goes back to that connection. Having a really true, genuine interest in who you're serving as a mentor. And even as a mentee, when you see that person going that genuine effort to make that connection, you need to go ahead and start to build that trust, because it's a partnership when you mentor a young man or a young woman. And I know we'll get into a little bit of that more, but that's the 8 pillars, and that's what is the anchor of New College engagement model. So, yeah.
Ooh, I appreciate it. Yes. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. And in your pillar, there's some things that I want to go a little bit in depth with. So for your emotional intelligence, how important is that for not young men, but also for young people altogether?
Oh man. So let me count the ways. So it's self-awareness, because we can have a proclivity to overestimate ourselves or marginalize things that deal with us just because it's us. And we got to approach our own persona with some humility and realize things do impact us, and be conscious of the fact that just because it's not showing any symptoms or signs now doesn't mean it's not impacting us. And I'll be dead transparent right now. Like, this happened less than 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. I have a young person whom I've known for a while, since he was 15, and he's now in his going into his late 20s. And the situation happened to where he needed some help. But more importantly, he expressed that he wanted to become better. So it was just all our effort done. And I'll be honest, I'm a loyalist to a fault. And this is just a moment of transparency for me. So when he reached out to me, because he reneged on his word in a couple of ways. And when you go hard for somebody and then they renege, it's human to feel betrayed. So I'm admitting I'm not ready to talk to him yet.
Right.
And so I said, God, please let me know when I am, so I could be sensible and still be loving, but be honest too. So did that make sense?
It does. It makes sense. You're being honest with yourself and who you are.
Yeah. So going to that, this same principle applies to other people. Going to your question, bring the full circle. Most intelligence is about being self-aware of the climate of your relationship and the climate of your psychology and your spirituality. That's why it's so important.
Right. And I feel if a good portion of young people, especially with the help that our young men need because of such lack of guidance that some of them have, or who their role models are, not just from a sense of who's around them, but also what's promoted on social media, what's promoted out in the world. Having that transparency with yourself, I don't think that is fostered with our young men in our communities today.
Yes, it's not. And I'll be honest, Janice, I grapple with it because, and we call it hard work. And it's hard work you have to have a capacity to deal with certain things because you do get a personal attachment. So it's important to be mindful of that, going to the emotional intelligence and be cognizant of that, and not being attached to their failure or their successes. And this is the first time I really dealt with something since I've been in this space. And I think it's because of the prolonged relationship we've had over what would you be thinking about 10, 12 years. I've known this person, so it's hard. And I met him through my wife initially. So it is a little bit of a different dynamic,
Right.
So yeah.
And then that's a conversation. Yeah, but that's a conversation to have on a different show, is the ups and downs you go through as a provider. Like, you are heavily invested in the youth that you serve. And sometimes I don't feel like they may see us as human beings. They might not see us completely as people that are so solely invested in them, not just in their success, but also in their character development, because they have the potential to be awesome, amazing, great. Who am I to tell you that you're not going to be the next president? Who am I to tell you that you're not going to be the next senator? Who am I not going to tell you that you may be the next Oprah?
Yeah.
You do all those things. Make this money, cut you a check.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, it's a process to get there, and being dedicated. I don't know if they are aware how dedicated to the process of their development we are.
Yes. And it's like, you in your mind, at least theoretically, you shouldn't want it more than them. But in a lot of cases, at least at some point, that is true for a certain part of the partnership. So we have to be very patient and forbearing and come at it a different way. But I will tell you, on the other side, when you see that light bulb come on, because the most important thing is that they realize they invested in themselves. It's not work. It's an investment in you. This is centered on you, your wellness. So this is tied back to how much you love yourself and want to love yourself. And you control this. As a coach, I'm here to help and be your wing person, but ultimately you hold the cards and have to know how to play them. So that's what it's tied to. And so so 8 pillars, when we meet that young person one-on-one, or we're doing a workshop, we just like you do in the professional realm, when you're trying to get your team together to get to a professional goal, they got to see themselves in the end result.
Right.
So what happens is, just to give you an example, what are the challenge areas you identify? Okay, you want to work on these. We agree that you want to work on these. So let's start putting this action plan together. And we do something incrementally each week. My program, when I work with them, is 12 weeks because it's paramount that you build trust and rapport before anything.
Yes.
So that first 5 to 6 weeks is just us, him getting to know Curtis and Curtis getting to know him. My birthday, what I like, what makes us laugh, our dynamics and within our families, things we share in common, things we are disparate on. But more importantly, we feel comfortable sharing this communication with each other.
Right.
So you build an intimacy, and that's a word that's not used a lot between men, because men need to be intimate.
Right.
Forget the stereotypical, whatever negative connotation. I'm not going to say all that, but you know what that is. But it's intimacy has so many forms beyond the contextual parameters that society set. And that's what we need as men. So when I'm in partnership, I'm in a healthy, intimate partnership with the guardian, the parents, and the young person, because I become a part of that village.
Whoop, whoop. And like you said, like, it's building, in those times that you're with them, is building that trust. So they feel comfortable with you and safe enough and know that this is a space for them to go ahead and share those challenges, whether they be emotional, whether it be in their personal environment, that you are the person that they can come to and kind of brainstorm or troubleshoot those challenges with. Safe spaces are very important. But I'm learning that they are not common with our young men, but with our young girls, that I've seen it, like, they'll create their own safe space.
Yes.
Like, that's not a problem. I got at least one.
Yeah.
At least one, maybe two, I could identify and know that I could go to with a problem or an issue, and that I could have that confidence in them that what I tell them, they'll keep between us, but they'll also go ahead and help me sort it out, whatever it may be. With young men, I'm learning that, looking at the young men that I also serve, is that trust is not always common between them. And this plays on a different dynamic as far
Yes.
as where they come from,
Yes.
what their background is, because there's a stereotype that also plays into that, but also what you do and what you don't have.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So with all those outside, quote unquote, barriers, how do you begin to make yourself vulnerable to trust the individual that's around you?
So I would say at least part of it, in being a coach, you have to disrupt the power dynamic. And what I mean by the power dynamic is it's an inherent power dynamic when it's an adult and a minor. It's often put in he or she's the adult and you're the child, and it's kind of implied that it's going to be a one-way communication. I give, you receive. So what I've learned, and because this is how I was approached with Carlos, even though he's so many years older than me, he's like, look, I'm working with you. So he did things in tandem with me. When he gave me an exercise, he did it with me.
Right.
Whether it was a physical exercise or a developmental one, he did it with me. So I use that approach here so many years later. When they have something, and just as an example, if the thing is to be more structured this week and time management, and I'm just going to use a fictitious name. Hey, Jonathan, what did you do to be more organized this week? Hey, well, Coach Kurt, this is what I did. I know I had these homework assignments, so I organized them from the one that I have the most challenges with to the one that I feel the most comfortable, and it helped be able to focus and give my energy to where it was needed most by tackling the most difficult one first. Then I end up having a little time on the back end to where my Friday was chill, and I didn't have any homework over the weekend. What did you do, Coach Curtis? Well, what I did was I rearranged some things with my daughter's appointments so I could go and support my wife in this thing because that was important to her, and so it ended up working out. Even though I had to move my schedule a little bit, but it optimized the time, and I was able to do what I need to my family. So that's an example. It's something we do together, and we come to the next session. And then what that does is they don't just see me as an adult, like another adult in their life. Like, okay, he's with me because he's investing, and he's asking me to do. He's not asking me to do something that he's not doing.
That's the thing, modeling the behavior that you want to see. I say it all the time. You have to be able to give the example in order for them to follow it.
Yes, so I find that to be very beneficial. So I'm very grateful to God and Carlos for introducing that approach to me.
Another thing I want to talk about in the 8 pillars of power. Another thing I wanted to talk about in the 8 pillars of power is safeguarding your space. Sir, can you talk about it, please? Because when I saw this, I hit the room. I was like, oh, we setting boundaries in this joint. Yes. I'm all for it. What we doing?
You have to put boundaries. As you grow and you learn where you see where you're going and where you want to go and where you're headed, it's very important that you have people that can support your vision in terms of just being there to support, but also to challenge you, And what I found is when you intentionally do that, people in your life will start to align accordingly based on where you're going, and it helps you be accountable as well. And keeps you safe from so much bull crap that's out there because, we can be inundated with superfluous information, but we don't mean we need to consume all of it.
Right.
But when you get around people who are structured, who have boundaries like you do, and once again, it's tied back to self-love. And I'll go there. It's just like a woman with her body, and I'll just use this because I feel like it's something everybody could relate to. Women typically have been taught to be Chaz, but men should have been taught the same thing. But what I'm pointing is that we got to value our space, not just our physical temple, but everything, the energy around it. And so it's so important that you bring that toxicity from anybody, whether you're married, single, student, whatever it is. You got to have somebody who's on the accord with you that's going to help you grow. And if somebody's not helping you grow, then it may be time to control or delete that relationship.
Right.
It may be time.
Right. Very much so. So how do you begin to teach your young men how to make those distinctions between the people that they need to set boundaries with, but how to go about setting those boundaries?
So one, you make it clear to the people that you're hanging with, in your circle. Like, you're very honest with them about your goals and the type of man that you want to become. But also you can look for indicators too. If you're around somebody and all their conversations based on things y'all used to do, that's a dead giveaway. If when you come talk to them and you say, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business, so I'm thinking about taking this course of certification, and they just like, man, remember when we was you might want to reevaluate that.
Mm-hmm.
So once you put the information out there and the parameters and be like, this is where I'm going, but it's also some indicators, that's where you can start filtering people out. And you shouldn't have survivor's remorse, but it is some inherent, especially if it's a person that you've known forever. But the truth is, you can't be loyal to a point to where now it's destructive and you're sacrificing your future. Because if I do keep this person in my life, realizing they could be detriment, I'm still responsible for it. So do I not love myself enough to make this commitment to myself? And that goes back to the accountability. So that's how these 8 pillars touch each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as soon as you try to wiggle out one, there's no room to wiggle out. Like, you're the guy. You're the guy. You have more control than you think. It's a lot we can't control, but it's a lot we can control. Like, we set the temperature. We set the temperature. And whether you're 14, 24, 34, 44, you got the power to do that.
That's exactly what happens. So in setting those boundaries, by using your indicators and also letting your team know, the people around you, what your goals are, what advice would you give these young men and even mentors that are mentoring these young men, how to help them in the process of cutting that relationship? What are some steps that they can use once they've gone through the process of, this is what I want to do. I've already stressed it to, the people around me. And I kind of still see this specific type of behavior. If we have to go to cutting the relationship, how do they go about that process?
So, and to the mentor piece, I will find a way, and you have to really have, this goes back to the cultural competency and connection. So you got to make sure, first of all, you understand the dynamics of that relationship. Really, beyond just the superficiality of it. Is it a relative? What did they play sports together? Like, how intimate is that relationship? And that'll drive how you can craft an approach around giving those probing questions to the young man. You know what? You've been sharing some things about such and such that sound counterproductive and that you've mentioned concerns about. Do you think it's time perhaps to have another talk and say, hey, we may have to change the nature of our relationship, or maybe not have one at all, because this is going to cause me some hurt down the road in terms of where I want to go. It's going to be a barrier for me. So you craft your answer or your approach around knowing the dynamics of that relationship. And with that mentee or that young man who's in that situation, they have to be accountable, but then also realize that they should not feel guilty for severing that relationship if it comes to that, or reducing the frequency of the encounters. You don't have that inherent guilt. They're not entitled to have your time. And I'm telling you something that I still deal with and work through and have been working through. You get committed to people, but like, why? What value is the commitment adding other than you saying you're committed? It's almost like being in a gang that's destructive. We committed to doing bad stuff, but we're just committed. Why is that commitment positive?
Right.
What are you committed to? What is the value in the commitment?
That's a real question. Like, that's a real question. Yeah. You got to sit down and ask myself something.
Are we trying to stay down just to stay down? Because we really will be down.
Right. Like, don't be surprised if that misery wants your company.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, like, you have to know when to let go, and know that that let go may not be forever. That let go might be just for right now until they find their space and what they want to do.
Yes. And I just got to put this out because I know I've been transparent with a lot of things that's been kind of ambivalent as we go through this conversational journey, but I really am blessed with the men that I'm surrounded by now, in terms of where they're at, what they're doing. I learned so much from them, and they accept me for my authentic self. And that's another thing. When people can grow with you and still accept you as your authentic self without judgment, that's another keeper. Because they're still challenging you, but they're not dangling. They're not trying to make you feel any type of way because you still have certain things you're working on.
Right.
So, Yeah.
That is true. And for these young men that are here in present moment and trying to do better and be better, what are some things that you see in this young generation that they may need from their older mentors?
Well, definitely social etiquette is a big thing. Opening doors, talking to a woman a certain way. And I'm kind of old school with this, but even how we deal with our elderly men and women, that's what we need more. That's one of the things we need. And not just in terms of interacting the general population in job interviews. And it's unfortunate that we have to code switch, but it's a real part of life. It's a real part of life. So, and my wife and I are actually working with a youth coalition, a church up in North Virginia on this, like where we've been helping and share ways how they can navigate this adverse terrain to their advantage. And it doesn't mean that they're not being true to themselves. It means they have the capacity to be versatile. Mm-hmm. It's all about perspective, because life's going to require you to adapt to various situations. You can't be static all the time. So just because you're not static does not mean you're not being true to yourself. As long as everything you're doing is with the intent of supporting your goals and continue to grow you, then you're being consistent and true to who you are.
Right.
And realize it may not look how you thought it may look.
Cultural competency, and this is the last one that we're going to touch with on these 8 pillars. Cultural competency. How important is that when you are going into mentoring, especially if you're going into mentoring with our young men from so many different backgrounds and so many different challenges?
Whew. I gotta take off my glasses for this one. So I think you really have to be cognizant of what that young man may be experiencing. And I'll start with a very staunch example of it's been the term used, black exhausted. Mm-hmm. And when you're a man of color, and the more rarefied air you get in, even on the school level, like you carry so much with you because you have all these different lenses perceiving you. So we got to understand to have some empathy, and like, I remember this one video I showed the Sunday school kids one time with St. Paul, like it had a connotation of each person through the school, like what they were dealing with. Like one young man was dealing with sleeping with no shower. An administrator had just gotten a divorce. You never know what people going through, was the point of it. And as you look at them, though, you may not surmise that or ascertain that just by looking at them, but they're going through these very trying times. So in cultural competency, the mentor, those who are serving, had to be real genuine in terms of wanting to learn the dynamic of what's going on in their household, in their community, and the emotional impact and psychological impacts that's having. That's where, and that informs them too that other services they may need, that they're not necessarily equipped with organization they may be part of to do that, because it's about best serving the young man. So That's where that cultural competency comes in. It's a lot of dynamic if you're the only young man in the house, or if there's nobody there, or if you're a teen father. That's something else we're working on here in Central Virginia. I know that'd be a different conversation, but that's a whole nother demographic.
I was about to say, ain't nobody talk about that.
So that, it's very paramount, because that, once again, and mentors, this is a humbling space. So we always got to be open to learning how are they dealing with this, and what are the potential implications, and realize everything is not textbook. Yeah, those are foundational tools, but they got to be tailored, and a lot of things, new things got to be invented.
Right.
So, yeah.
So based on this space of mentoring, what would you want to see for the young men in our communities that we serve? How would you want to see them progress and build like their crowns and their kingdoms?
That's dope. Build their crowns. That's dope. I like the way you term that. So like with the mentorships, organizations had to be more relationship oriented, long-term relationship oriented. So part of it is because just like anything, you can age out of it, but there also needs to also be an alum group, some type of something they can plug back into at some point once they become over 18 or 21.
I was talking about that.
Yeah, so it's staying connected. So to answer your question, that's why I would like to see, and I know it's hard because you need people, but that the relationships, those long-term relationships help because they know that they're connected and they have an infrastructure to plug into. And I think we need to change, just like we've changed the language with mental health and targeted versus, at risk and things like that. I think we need to change the language around it. Like, I see some organizations say, we serve the communities in the urban poor. Like, I think we got to change the vernacular in the conversation. You still could be honest, but it could be, I think it's a better way to present it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
I mean, it's no secret about social economic classes, but when you have titles like that, it adds a connotation to it that's not necessarily well received. Because you're talking to somebody from North Philadelphia who's very familiar with food stamps and welfare, But do I want to be seen that way? Just like I don't want us to be seen as a collective monolithic of Black people, because we are very multifaceted, So, because the substratum of that, how you communicate is an indicator of the respect that is or isn't there. So we need to be honest in how we communicate and engage our communities that we're seeking to serve, and being true to who they are and true to our purpose, and realizing that we got to make sure we frame everything around that with positive, strength-based language and let it inform our decision-making process.
Right. In 5 years, where do you want to see New Collar Solutions?
In 5 years, I would love to see us have built a sustainable, awesome, qualitative team of kindred spirits, men and women like my wife and I, that share the same passion, and being present in schools and various communities, whether it be a Y or a certain performing arts school, and having successful partnerships to where we're ubiquitous. A really stakeholder, and the reputation is there, and New Collar Solutions care, and everybody who comes to the table that is a partner and a supporter and a labor in the vineyard has that same genuine heart, but they bring their own unique gift to the table. Because I said before, I'm not the end all. I don't know everything. There's a lot of other gifted people out here that I'm looking to partner with, just like yourself. So that's where we want to see New Collar Solutions in the next 5 years. More present, active, and engaged, and leveraging the awesome talent and folks and compassion that's out there.
Oh, awesome. So for those of them that may not know, give us a brief summary of what New Collar Solutions is and how you are impacting the community.
So New Collar Solutions is a privately owned firm founded by yours truly, Curtis E. Hall II. And we focus on empowering young men through integrative life coaching principles. Those 8 pillars that we talked about earlier, those are the anchor and root of what we do and how we build our model around the young men that we serve. We do one-on-one, but we also do speaking engagements and facilitate workshops. And we love to partner. So that's what New Collar does here in Central Virginia, and we're open to virtual as well as in person. And we're on all social media platforms at New Collars, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and Twitter.
Whoop, whoop. All right, so we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to go straight to our Professionals Lounge.
Professionals Lounge is a segment of the show that allows guests to share advice and tips with other practitioners in the OST and youth development field about how they can grow their gifts and talents, but also develop themselves as professionals in the field. Without further ado, here's our Professionals Lounge conversation.
Okay, so Curtis, my Professionals Lounge question for you is, for a person that's coming into this space for being a mentor or even being a recruiter for mentors, what are some things that they need to keep in mind, and how should they professionally develop themselves to be successful at what they do?
So they need to keep in mind, they need to ask themselves, why do they want to do it? What's their driving force? Is it to give back? To give back to who? Was it something? Did they feel the need to pay it forward? Did somebody from a certain community impact them in a certain way that they feel obligated? So explore why they're doing it and assess that reason. Is this a long-term commitment that you're willing to make in terms of time and investment based on the reason you're doing it? Then if the answer is yes, then as you go in there, be open to realizing that you may be matched with someone who may be worlds different than you, based on it, because it's all centered around the needs of that young person. So be open to that. And then for organizations, safety, we can't negate safety. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention safety. We got to make sure, because unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are exploiting this space and don't have the best interests of the young people in mind. So we got to vet people rigorously. That means references, background checks, and pop-up visits when they're meeting with their mentee. What's going on? What's the conversation like? Because we got to treat these young people just like they're our own. I love these young men. Every client I've been blessed to have and will have, I love. Just like I love Journey and Kendall, my own daughters. So that's not a light responsibility. So we need to safeguard that space and make sure their wellness is put first and foremost. And the mentors, anybody need to be dedicated at 150% come to the space as well, along with the reason that they're doing it. Because if that's not the top of the list, they need to kick rocks. We don't need them.
Right.
We don't need them.
That's the truth. Like, if you're not gonna do it right, it's for some people it's just something to do. For other people, they do it for the impact and for the development of the person.
Yeah.
So once you get down to the motive, it's like you know what it is and what it's not.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm thinking about before I'm getting ready to say, like it's always a theoretical debate. Is anything truly altruistic? And I guess at the core, you could say no, because if you really genuinely love serving, you do get something from it. But it looks different, because it's not predicated on building yourself up. It's predicated on the fact that you really want to see somebody else win. And win it being the best version of themselves, not necessarily a competition. So I don't know why, but that just came to mind, because I know it's something we deal with in terms of why we're doing it. And even as you navigate, you really have to set yourself, even if you've been in the space. And that's why I say that it keeps me very humble, just like being a parent keeps me very humble. You have to set your own, like, do I still love it the way I do, or the way I did? So not just when you initially become a mentor or mentee, but as long as you're in that space, you need to constantly check in with yourself. Okay, am I still committed to this in excellence? Because there may come a time when you switch, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our show. I'd like to thank our guest, Curtis Hall, for being here with us today and talking with us about the needs of our young men, but also how he's doing his part to pay it forward with the New Collar Solutions. If you enjoyed this episode and feel you received some good information, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or visit the Podchaser website and leave us a comment. This will help us get feedback on the show and collect testimonials for our personal website. Share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your network. Help us spread the word about how OSC programs and youth development programs are impacting our community as well as our youth. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Well, that's all I have for you today. In the words of Mr. Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Until next time, bye-bye.